My name is Emily Carson. I'm 35, a loan officer at a regional bank in Naperville, Illinois. I'm the kind of person who keeps her head down, says please and thank you, never forgets a birthday, and always refills the coffee pot even if I'm the last to use it. 3 weeks ago, I made a promise to myself. I would never step foot in my parents' house again. But this story doesn't begin there. No. It begins at my daughter's 7th birthday party. With a strawberry tart, a cracked porcelain plate, and my daughter whispering 5 words that changed everything. Mom, we need to leave. Now. The table was laid out with Martha Stewart precision, my mother's signature style. Floral paper napkins folded into triangles. A slightly lopsided happy birthday, Freya banner hung across the kitchen pass-through. The strawberry tart, my mom's famous recipe, glistened under the cheap pendant light like a jewel on display. It was a Sunday, early May, one of those rare Midwestern afternoons where the breeze is soft. The trees are greening, and everything looks better than it feels. My father, Robert, was swirling a glass of off-brand Merlot, leaning back in the patio chair like a king surveying his domain. Bianca, my younger sister by 2 years, and emotionally coddled by 60, was scrolling on her phone, throwing forced smiles toward her twins, who were wrecking the backyard azaleas. Freya was sitting stiffly at the table, her tiny hands clenched in her lap. "You okay?" "Baby," I whispered, bending toward her. She nodded. "Too fast. Want me to cut your slice?" I asked, already reaching for the pie knife. And then so quietly I almost missed it, she said, "Don't eat the tart." "Mom." I paused. "What?" Her lips barely moved. "I think we should go. Like, right now." A weird chill crawled across my scalp. My daughter's face was pale. Not just nervous pale, but sick pale. Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen, where my mom was talking in that shrill, polished tone she used when she wanted everyone to think she was the perfect host. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. Not yet. To understand why I listened to Freya without hesitation, why I stood up, grabbed our jackets, and told my mom we were leaving in the middle of her perfect party. You have to understand what kind of family I came from. My parents, Martha and Robert Carson, were the suburban ideal. Dad taught high school economics for 32 years. Mom stayed home, baked from scratch, volunteered at church, and made it her mission to micromanage her daughters into oblivion. From the outside, we were the American dream. 2 girls in matching Christmas dresses. My dad winning Teacher of the Year. My mom chairing the PTA's annual fundraiser, but behind closed doors. It was emotional trench warfare. Oh yeah. I was the helper, the fixer, the quiet achiever. Bianca was the golden child. I got straight A's. She got a car at 16. I worked at a bakery from age 15, gave half my paycheck to the house, and was told, "Good girls don't brag." Bianca skipped class and got a mental health day. When my high school boyfriend cheated on me, my mother said, "Maybe if you smiled more." When I landed my first real job at the bank, she said, "Bianca could use help paying rent." Don't be selfish. That's who they were. People who dressed control as concern, cruelty as character building. And yet, for a long time, I stayed close. I thought maybe if I was helpful enough, quiet enough, good enough, I could earn their love the proper way. By proving I was strong, unshakable, until I became a mom. Everything changed when Freya was born. Suddenly, I had this little person who looked up at me like I held the whole world together. And I realized I'd spent decades letting my own parents pull me apart. But I didn't cut them off. Not yet. I kept the birthday visits. The Christmas Eve drop-ins. I told myself boundaries would do the trick. Limit exposure. Smile through the guilt trips. Freya adored her grandparents. Or, at least, she used to. That birthday morning, she was quiet. We were in the car, heading toward my childhood home, same clapboard siding, same cracked driveway, and she was just staring out the window, excited for Nana's tart. I asked lightly. She didn't answer. You okay? I don't want to go, she whispered. My stomach twisted, but I smiled like moms do when they're afraid to ask more. It's just 2 hours, I said. We'll be in and out, like ripping off a Band-Aid. She didn't respond. Now, standing at the party table, with the strawberry tart in front of us and my mother's too bright smile cutting through the spring air, I remembered that silence, the way Freya had gripped her seatbelt the entire ride there. I looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't just scared. She was bracing for something, like she'd seen something or heard something. And then she did something she's never done in her life. She reached into her tiny unicorn purse, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, and slid it toward me under the table. It was a drawing. 2 figures, one large, one small. Both had red X's over their mouths. One had a crown. The other had no face. And between them, a plate. A circle. Red scribbles all over it. My heart stopped. What's this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I drew it yesterday, she murmured. Please don't ask right now. My hands were shaking. I stood up, folded the napkin, took her hand. We need to go, I said loudly. To the table. My mom blinked. What? But you haven't even tried the tart. I'm not feeling well. Thanks for the invite. I grabbed Freya's jacket, steered her toward the door. My dad raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Bianca rolled her eyes and muttered something about drama queen. We were in the car before anyone followed. Freya buckled herself in with trembling fingers. You want to tell me what's going on? I asked gently. She looked out the window. I heard Nana say something to Aunt Bianca yesterday. On the phone. I wasn't supposed to hear it. What did she say? Freya's lips parted, then closed. I don't want to go back there, she said. Ever. I stared at her. And then I looked in the rearview mirror and realized the back seat, her backpack. It wasn't packed for a party. It had her toothbrush, pajamas, a flashlight, her favorite book. She'd packed to leave, not visit. She knew. She'd known before I did. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. My daughter had seen what I refused to admit, and she was already preparing for escape. But what did she hear? And why was the tart covered in red? After we left the party, I didn't drive straight home. I pulled into a deserted parking lot behind the old garden center off Route 59, somewhere I used to sneak off to as a teen when I needed to cry without witnesses. It was nearly empty, save for a few wind-blown carts and the ghost of spring sales long gone. I turned the engine off. The air conditioner ticked into silence. Freya stared straight ahead, her hands folded over the unicorn on her dress. That little drawing she gave me, still clutched in her lap. My voice cracked when I asked, Sweetheart, what did Nana say? She didn't look at me. I heard her talking to Aunt Bianca. Yesterday. On speaker. She didn't know I was in the hallway. Anne, what did she say? Freya pressed her lips together. She said I was too soft. That you were making me weak. That you coddle me too much? My throat tightened. Okay, she said. Freya whispered. That I needed to be taught how the world works. Just like you were. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. Just like I hadn't told Freya much about my childhood. Bits and pieces. A few deflections. I thought I'd done a decent job protecting her from it all. But there it was, out in the open. My mother's logic passed down like a family recipe. And suddenly, that strawberry tart didn't feel sweet anymore. Let me take you back. I was 9 the first time my mother called me too soft. It was a Wednesday. I'd cried at school because a teacher yelled at me for turning in my assignment late. An assignment I'd stayed up trying to finish after cooking dinner and putting Bianca to bed because Mom had one of her church migraines. She looked at me, dead in the eyes, and said, "Stop crying. You think the world cares about your feelings? Toughen up." When Bianca threw tantrums, she got hugs and lollipops. When I stayed quiet and worked hard, I got used. I learned early that in my family, being the good one meant being invisible. My dad, he didn't hit, he didn't scream. But he did worse in some ways. He made everything feel normal. Your mother means well. She's just stressed. You girls are lucky we didn't have any of this back in my day. He erased what I felt with logic. Like facts could replace pain. By the time I was 16, I was paying bills, babysitting Bianca's kids when she partied, and pretending like I wasn't slowly falling apart. But I never said anything. Why? Because I believed them. I thought that maybe I was too sensitive, that maybe if I just tried harder, smiled more, complained less, I could earn their love. So I played along for years. Even after college. Even after my first marriage fell apart. Even after Freya was born. Even when I saw my mother's eyes scan my daughter the way she used to scan me, as if looking for cracks she could widen, I still showed up to family birthdays with homemade cookies and a fake laugh. And that's what makes this so hard to admit. Freya saw through them before I did. She knew, and she tried to protect me. Back in the car? I asked her, "Is that why you packed your toothbrush?" Freya gave a slow nod. "I didn't want to sleep there," she whispered. "I didn't want to eat anything. I just wanted to make sure if something happened, we could leave fast." She reached into her backpack and pulled out something I didn't expect. A tiny pink digital recorder. Cheap. Kid-sized. Like a toy from the mall's educational store. "I recorded it," she said. But I deleted it. My heart dropped. Why? I got scared. What if they found it? "What if you got mad at me?" Her voice cracked, and the tears came not dramatic sobs, but those shuddering breaths that kids try so hard to hide when they think they need to be strong. I undid my seatbelt and pulled her into my arms. "Oh, baby, I'm not mad. I'm proud of you." So proud. You did the right thing. She clung to me like she was drowning. And maybe, in some way, we sat there for a long time. In silence. Just breathing. It was the first time in years I allowed myself to feel all of it. The rage. The shame. The guilt. And the crushing realization that I'd almost let history repeat itself. If I hadn't listened to her. If I'd brushed it off like my parents always did. That thought alone made me shake. You see? People love to romanticize family. They throw around words like forgiveness and loyalty and tradition, especially in tight-knit Midwest towns like ours. But sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is protect your child from the people who raised you. Even if they're wearing the same smile they used to hurt you with. Even if they baked your favorite dessert. Especially then. I thought of that drawing again. The faceless adult. The red scribbled plate. The X's over their mouths. Freya had been trying to say something she didn't have words for. She couldn't say, "My grandmother is emotionally dangerous." She couldn't say, "I heard them planning to break me like they broke you." But she drew it. And I ignored it until it was almost too late. So I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I picked up my phone and texted my therapist. Need to see you. Emergency. It's about my daughter. Then I opened a new note. Title: Rules for Breaking the Cycle. Listen when your kid says, "I'm scared." Trust your gut. Not guilt. You're not the same little girl anymore. I started the car again. Freya had fallen asleep, curled up against the door. Her little recorder rested in her lap like a forgotten weapon in a silent war. And suddenly, I remembered something I hadn't thought of in years. When I was 7, just about Freya's age, I once drew a picture of my mom yelling with fire around her mouth. I left it on the kitchen table. The next morning, it was gone. No one mentioned it. But that night, my mom made my favorite dinner. No apology. No words. Just baked ziti. Just like that tart today. The food was always the apology. The dessert was the denial. And this time, I wasn't going to swallow it. Because next week, my parents were planning a family weekend trip. And I had every intention of saying no. Until I found out who else was invited. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from my mother. Martha Carson, family group. Just a reminder, family weekend next Friday. Cabins booked. Meals prepped. Hot cocoa waiting. Can't wait to see everyone. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. The message was decorated with autumn leaves and a cozy fireplace gif. Classic mom sugarcoating everything with emojis and passive aggression. She didn't mention yesterday. Not a single word about us walking out. No check-in. No, is Freya okay? Just business as usual. Like nothing happened. Like it never happened. I was about to reply with a firm, "We won't be coming," when another text buzzed through. Bianca. I'm carpooling with Taylor. Remember, I'm not driving 3 HRs with your judgmental ass again. Wait. Taylor. My heart stopped. Taylor, my cousin. My former best friend. My teenage shadow. The one who used to braid my hair. Sneak Pop-Tarts into my locker. Cry when her parents fought. Sleep on my floor during long summers. And the one who, 16 years ago, handed my private diary to my mother. I hadn't seen Taylor in over a decade. After the diary incident, I stopped speaking to her. She claimed she just didn't want me to get hurt, that she was worried about what I was writing. But it wasn't concern. It was betrayal, neatly packaged in worry. Because that diary, my one safe space, held everything. The way my mom talked to me when no one was listening. The time my dad laughed when I cried about being called a burden. The panic attacks I'd learned to hide by biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. And Taylor gave it away like it was trash. Now she was being invited back. Like she never broke me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then froze. A question rose like a splinter under the skin. Why now? Why dust off old relatives and throw us all into one big cabin-shaped pressure cooker? Something wasn't right. Later that day, I called my Aunt Ruth Taylor's mom under the guise of asking about a recipe. She was always a little loose-lipped after a glass of wine. "Oh, honey, didn't your mom tell you?" she said. Half whisper, half gloat. "They're planning something special this time. A healing weekend," she called it. A chance to get everyone back on track. Mend old wounds. My spine stiffened. A healing weekend. For whom? Ruth chuckled. Like she knew a secret and couldn't help herself. Martha said she might even do a little circle session. You know, like those therapy shows where everyone shares their truth. My mouth went dry. My mother, the woman who once said therapy was for people who didn't pray hard enough, was planning a group intervention. No, she was planning a performance. That night, I tossed and turned. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Freya's drawing the faceless adult, the blood-red plate, the X's over the mouths. What would she do if we went on that trip? Smile sweetly. Feed my daughter more poisoned compliments. Pretend to apologize while twisting the knife. Or worse, would she try to prove that I was the problem? Paint me as unstable, overprotective, bitter. After all, she's done it before. When I was 22 and filed for divorce from Vincent, my first husband, she told the entire church committee I had a rebellious phase and was going through something emotional. She even called my ex to check on him. Because in my mother's world, anytime a woman demands better, she's clearly just unstable. Especially if that woman is her daughter. The next morning, Freya handed me her recorder again. Quiet. Solemn. I think it recorded something else. I blinked. When? At the party. After we left the kitchen. I didn't know it was still on. I hesitated. Then pressed play. There was static. Then footsteps. Then voices. My mother. Bianca. And Taylor. Martha laughing. She always was dramatic. Storming out over dessert, really? Bianca. She'll be back? She can't stay mad forever. That girl craves approval like it's oxygen. Taylor. You think she'll actually come to the cabin? Martha. Oh. She'll come. She's too proud not to. Besides, I've got a few things I need to say to her. Closure is important. Bianca. Closure or control? Martha pause. Same thing. Sweetheart. I stopped the recording. Freya was watching me, her eyes wide. They want to trap me, I whispered. Not with ropes. With shame. With guilt. With public forgiveness. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a scared little girl trying to be liked. I felt angry, because now it wasn't just about me. They were playing with my daughter's trust. They were planning to twist her too. I opened my laptop, started a document. Subject: Emergency Family History Record. I typed everything I remembered. Not for revenge. Not yet. For clarity. For armor. Because when gaslighting is the family tradition, documentation is survival. Then I sent a short reply to my mother's group text. Emily. Thanks for the invite. I have some concerns I'd like to discuss before confirming. Let me know when you have time. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then I got a second call from Bianca. Then Taylor. They were circling, which meant they were scared. Good. They thought I'd walk into that cabin like prey. They forgot I was a mother now. And I wasn't walking in to be forgiven. I was walking in to finish what they started. Sitting in my dimly lit living room that night, the glow from my laptop illuminated every tired line on my face. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant murmur of cars on the highway. Freya was asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the calm. I leaned back, eyes scanning the list. I'd compiled a dossier of every slight, every lie, every secret I'd uncovered over the years I had tried to bury beneath polite smiles and forced family dinners. But now, it was all out in the open. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rescue. The plan wasn't just to say no to the family weekend. It was to take back control, to protect Freya and myself from a cycle that had threatened to swallow us whole. I started by setting boundaries no one in my family respected before. I blocked my mother and Bianca on social media. No more passive-aggressive posts about family. No more curated snapshots of perfect lives meant to shame me. Next, I reached out to my closest allies. First, my therapist, Dr. Langston. I told her everything. She reminded me that healing isn't linear, and that the past, no matter how painful, Doesn't have to dictate the future. She helped me draft some clear language, how to say no without burning bridges, how to protect my daughter without guilt. Then, there was Jason, my ex-husband. Our marriage had ended in silence and cold goodbyes. But when I told him about Freya's fears and the family weekend, he surprised me. He offered to help watch Freya if I needed space, attend family gatherings as moral support, even speak up if things got out of hand. Finally, I connected with Paul, my brother-in-law. Unlike the rest of the family, he never fully bought into the Carson facade. Quiet, kind, and always on the sidelines. Paul had a secret he was recording. Not to betray, but to protect. "I'll bring my camera," he said. Not for a documentary, for evidence. The day before the weekend, I sat Freya down. Her small hands clasped mine tightly. "We're going to see Grandma and Grandpa," I said softly. "But if anything makes you uncomfortable, you tell me." "Okay." She nodded, eyes wide but trusting. I thought about that recorder she carried everywhere, her weapon, her shield. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. That small device, no bigger than a deck of cards, represented everything. The silent witness, the truth hidden beneath layers of smiles. Driving toward the cabin the next morning, the suburban streets gave way to rolling hills and clusters of fiery maple trees. The air smelled of pine and wet earth, the quintessential Midwest fall. The cabin itself was exactly what you'd imagine. Rustic wood siding, a stone chimney, and a sprawling porch littered with Adirondack chairs. The Carsons were already there. Martha's fake warmth was like a tight glove squeezing my hand. Bianca flashed her usual smirk. Taylor hovered just behind them, her eyes flickering between me and Freya, like a predator sizing up prey. I forced a smile, feeling every muscle in my body tense. That night, the family gathered around the fireplace. A circle of chairs arranged with Martha at the center, like a queen commanding her court. She called it a sharing session, a chance to heal and grow. But beneath her carefully chosen words was something darker. I watched as Taylor whispered into Martha's ear. I heard Bianca's soft scoffs when I shared my feelings. They weren't here to heal. They were here to control. I held Freya's hand tightly, her small fingers trembling. When it was my turn, I stood and spoke, not with anger, not with tears, but with steady resolve. "I'm here to break the cycle," I said, "not to keep it alive." The room fell silent, and in that silence, I saw it. The flicker of doubt in Martha's eyes, the brief falter in Bianca's smile. Later, in the cabin's shadowed hallway, I found Taylor staring at the old family photo on the wall, our faces frozen in time. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. She looked up, eyes glistening with something unspoken. "I thought it was the right thing," she whispered. "But maybe I was wrong." It was the first crack in their perfect facade. But just as I thought I was gaining ground, the twist hit. The next morning, I discovered the drawing Freya had made was missing. The one with the faceless adult. The red scribbled plate. Gone. And in its place, a note. Some truths aren't meant to be drawn. They were trying to erase the evidence, to silence the witness. But Freya and I were just getting started. What would happen when silence wasn't an option? And who would be brave enough to speak next? The cabin had become a chessboard, and every move mattered. I wasn't just playing for myself anymore. I was fighting for Freya, for every silenced voice that came before us. The night after the note disappeared, I made a decision. I was going to turn their game on its head. No more hiding. No more silent suffering. I packed a small bag, my laptop, Freya's recorder, a few essentials, and handed the reins to Paul, my brother-in-law. the quiet observer with the camera always rolling. His eyes held the same fire. I felt ready to expose the truth. We started by recording everything. Every conversation. Every whispered insult. Every forced smile that hid venom. Bianca complained loudly about Emily's drama, while Martha played the perfect hostess, but with eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Taylor hovered in the background, her phone glued to her hand, snapping pictures like a secret spy. Freya. She tucked her recorder into her backpack. A small but mighty weapon. She kept her eyes wide. Listening. Watching. Learning. One evening, I found myself alone with my mother in the kitchen. The smell of cinnamon from freshly baked apple pie filled the air, but it felt heavy, like a trap. She smiled sweetly. "You're so strong, Emily. But you can't change us. This is how families work." I looked her in the eyes. "No, this isn't family. Not if it breaks us." She laughed dry, bitter. "You'll regret this. We all do." Her words hung like smoke in the air. Later that night, Paul played me a recording he'd captured earlier, a private conversation between Martha and Bianca in the living room. Martha. "She's pushing too hard. Freya's too impressionable. Bianca. If we don't keep her close, she'll slip through our fingers." Martha. "Then we make her doubt herself. Turn her fears against her." My hands trembled. The room felt colder. They weren't just protecting their secrets, they were preparing to destroy mine. The next day, the tension reached a boiling point. Freya sat beside me at the dinner table, her fingers clutching the edge like a lifeline. Across the room, Bianca smirked and whispered to Taylor, loud enough for me to hear, "She's losing it. You watch. She'll crack before the weekend's over." I leaned toward Freya. "You're stronger than you think, kiddo." She nodded, swallowing hard. Suddenly, the power went out. Total darkness engulfed the cabin. A collective gasp. Martha's voice. Calm, but with an edge. "Looks like the storm's here. That blackout wasn't an accident." We later learned that Bianca had unplugged the generator in the basement. Why? To isolate us. To control the narrative. But it backfired. In the pitch dark, with only the glow of our phones and the faint sound of rain outside, I found an unexpected courage. I stood up, voice steady, commanding. "This ends now." And I pulled out Freya's recorder, switching it on. "Let's hear the truth." In the next hour, secrets spilled like water breaking a dam. Old grievances, hidden insults, thinly veiled threats, all caught on tape. The power outage had loosened tongues. By the time the lights flickered back on, the room was transformed. The smiles were gone. The facade cracked. But just when I thought we were turning a corner, the biggest twist hit. That night, as I tucked Freya into bed, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "I found this in the basement," she whispered. It was a faded photograph. Me, as a teenager, clutching that same diary, the one Taylor had betrayed me with. And beside me in the photo, a younger Martha, smiling with a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. But scribbled across the photo in red ink was a single word: liars. They'd been watching us, recording us, planning for this moment long before we even arrived. And now, the real game had begun. How far would they go to keep their secrets safe? And would I be ready to fight back with everything I had? The fallout was immediate and brutal. By the next morning, the perfect image my parents had spent decades polishing was in ruins. News traveled fast in our small suburban circles. Whispers and side glances followed me everywhere, from the grocery store to Freya's school playground. But the biggest shock was in the cabin itself. Martha's usual composure cracked like shattered glass. She no longer controlled the room. Instead, she seethed beneath her carefully crafted smile. Like a volcano, moments from eruption. Bianca's smirk faded into thin-lipped silence. Taylor, the once confident observer, avoided my gaze, her posture shrinking with every conversation. And then came the phone call. It was my father. Robert. His voice was cold, distant, like he was speaking through layers of ice. Emily, this has gone too far. You've humiliated the family. I bit back the words that wanted to scream. You did this to me for years. Instead, I said calmly, I'm done pretending it's okay to be hurt in silence. This isn't about humiliation, it's about truth. He sighed heavily. Your mother is heartbroken. Your sister too. You're tearing us apart. I swallowed my rising anger. Maybe we needed to be torn apart. The next few hours felt like a trial. Martha cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes sharp. You've made us the villains, she accused. Do you want to lose your family? I want to save my daughter from becoming one, I replied. Her face twisted. We did what we thought was best. I shook my head. No, you did what was easiest. You hid behind traditions and lies. Meanwhile, Freya clung to me, her little hands gripping mine as if we were the only safe things left. Her eyes reflected the storm inside me, fear mixed with a fierce determination. I thought about the recorder in her backpack, the symbol of our fight. She was no longer a silent witness. She was part of the rebellion. Later that evening, Paul approached me with the footage he'd captured over the weekend. It was raw, unfiltered, a brutal exposé of our family's toxic dance. This is more than proof, he said. It's the story we need to tell. I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was bigger than me, bigger than Freya. It was about breaking a cycle so deeply rooted it had poisoned generations. But just when I thought we were gaining the upper hand, the final twist hit. Martha had contacted a lawyer. A cease and desist letter arrived the next day, demanding Paul hand over all recordings, threatening legal action if we didn't comply. The message was clear. Stop! Or else. I sat in my living room. The letter crumpled in my hands, heart pounding. For a moment, the fight seemed overwhelming. But then Freya entered, clutching the torn edges of her drawing, the one with the red scribbles and the faceless figure. She looked up at me, eyes bright despite everything. We're not done, Mom, she said softly. And in that moment, I knew she was right. The battle lines were drawn. The past was no longer just history. It was a war zone. And someone was about to make a move no one expected. Who would strike first? And how far would I have to go to protect my daughter and myself? The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting long shadows across the quiet room where Freya lay curled up with her favorite stuffed unicorn. For the first time in weeks, there was a calmness in the air, a fragile peace after the storm. I sat beside her, fingers tracing the worn edges of the torn drawing she'd clung to so tightly, the one with the faceless adult and the scribbled red plate. It was a symbol of everything we had endured and everything we had survived. This wasn't just a story about a broken family or old wounds. It was about the power to rewrite the narrative. I remember sitting down with Paul to review the footage we had gathered over those intense days at the cabin. Every whispered insult, every veiled threat, every cruel joke, it was all there, unfiltered and raw. But it wasn't just evidence. It was proof that love can be buried beneath layers of hurt, but never truly extinguished. I reached out to a local support group, connecting with other mothers and daughters who had faced similar battles. Their stories echoed mine, tales of betrayal, resilience, and the hard work of healing. Together, we learned that breaking cycles doesn't happen overnight. It takes courage. It takes patience. And above all, it takes the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. When I finally confronted my parents one last time, it wasn't with anger or bitterness. It was with honesty. I don't want to erase our past. I told them quietly, but I refuse to let it define our future.
If we're going to be a family,
it has to be on new terms. Terms of respect, love, and truth. Martha's eyes softened, a flicker of regret crossing her features. Robert nodded slowly, as if realizing for the first time the cost of silence. And Bianca, well, she was quieter than I'd ever seen her. Freya watched from the doorway, her small hand gripping mine. She had become my greatest teacher, reminding me that vulnerability is strength, and that love means standing up for yourself and for those you care about. Her recorder, the symbol of our fight, sat on my desk now, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices hold the loudest truths. But healing is a journey, not a destination. There are days when the past still whispers in the quiet moments, threatening to pull me back. There are nights when the weight of memories feels heavier than the dawn. Yet, every time I look at Freya's face, I am reminded why I fight, why I will never stop. And so, as we move forward, imperfect but unbroken, I carry a promise in my heart: to protect, to nurture, to break the cycle. For her, for me, for anyone who has ever felt trapped by the shadows of their past. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are not the ones fought against others, but the ones we fight within ourselves. Will we ever truly be free from the scars of our family? Or will the past always find a way to echo in the silence? The answer is still unwritten. Story 2. My name is Selena Moore. I'm 31 years old. I work in tech. I drink my coffee black. And apparently, according to my mother, I'm no longer part of this family. Her exact words, over the phone: "You're not in this family anymore. Stay gone." And I said, calmly, "Okay." No screaming. No begging. "No, but Mom." Just, okay. Then I opened my laptop, logged into 3 accounts, and started taking names specifically. My own. I removed myself from the home equity loan they had wrapped me into 5 years ago. I locked the backup savings account they'd been dipping into without asking. And I canceled the automatic property tax payments I'd been footing for a house that didn't even have my name on the deed. It wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. It was boundaries. At 7. So 2 a.m. The next morning, my dad's name flashed on my screen. I didn't pick up. His voicemail was a frantic tangle of words. Why is the county threatening foreclosure? Selena, what did you do? We're not ready for this. I stirred my coffee and stared out the window at the quiet. Rainy morning in Portland. They weren't ready. They hadn't been ready for a long time. Not for consequences. Not for accountability. Definitely not for me to finally act like they raised me to logical, resourceful, prepared. But wait. Let's rewind. Because to understand why I chose to cut the lifelines, you'd have to understand what it's like to be raised not just as the eldest daughter, but as the designated disappointment. My family always had a hierarchy, and I learned early on that I was somewhere between the unpaid help and the cautionary tale. My little sister, Lana, was the golden child, always sweet, always easy. The kind of girl who apologized just for existing too loudly. She figured out early how to float between people, always being agreeable, always saying the right thing, always safe. I didn't float. I asked questions. I pointed out inconsistencies. I fought back when I was blamed for things I hadn't done. My mother once said I had the energy of a corporate HR complaint. I was 11 tall, By the time I graduated college with a degree in computer information systems, I had already learned to keep my voice calm, my boundaries clear, and my expectations low. And yet I kept trying. After my dad's heart scare 6 years ago, I was the one who moved things around to open a backup savings account. Just for medical emergencies, I said. You'll have access, but I'll keep admin controls in case anything gets messy. When my mom was between jobs, I covered utilities. Just a few months, she said. The months became years. They never said thank you, but I didn't ask for one. I hoped if I just showed up, quietly, reliably, they'd see me, not as a problem, but as part of the structure. Instead, they built that house on my labor, and then turned around and told the neighbors I was the too independent one. And when they told me I wasn't family anymore, they forgot one thing. I wasn't just family. I was funding. I didn't cry after that phone call. I opened the drawer where I keep my documents and pulled out my black moleskin notebook, the one I'd been using as a personal finance journal since the pandemic. The first page, Morehouse Contributions, Selena. It was a quiet list. Just lines and numbers. $1, $200, Dad's medication copay, 2020, $6.75, emergency plumber bill, 2021, $4, $900, property tax coverage, 2022, $180, groceries, while mom job hunts recurring. It went on for 10 pages. Each item dated, noted, some underlined. I'd never shown it to anyone, but as I flipped to the back, I added one final line. Removed from all obligations, July 18th, 2024. Exit complete. That night, I slept better than I had in months. But peace doesn't last long when you break family contracts, especially unspoken ones. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, there was a knock at my apartment door. Not a polite one. The kind that says, "Open up before we make this worse." I glanced through the peephole and blinked. My dad was standing there, looking furious, confused, and utterly unprepared. But what knocked the air out of my chest was who stood next to him. Rachel, my ex. We hadn't spoken in 8 months. She'd moved out without drama. No screaming, no betrayal, just a quiet drift. Different goals, she'd said. And honestly, I hadn't blamed her. So seeing her now beside my father, on my doorstep, was like watching a spider crawl across your ceiling, carrying a photo of your childhood dog. I opened the door. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Dad launched into a full monologue. Your mother was upset. It was just words. Selena, you know how she gets? This is all blown way out of proportion. And Rachel wanted to come. She was worried about you. Rachel stood there like a well-trained actor. Eyes soft. Posture open. Voice hesitant. I still care. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you're all right. My mouth said nothing. But my brain was doing calculus. They thought I'd crumble. They brought in my soft spot. They assumed I'd fall back into the role. Helpful. Reliable. Bleed for us, Selena. I stepped aside. Pointed down the hall. You both can leave now. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it. My dad's shoulders sagged. They turned. They left. I locked the door behind them. Not just physically. Something else clicked inside me. And that was when I realized this wasn't just a fight. This was extraction. A clean cut from a system that fed on me, then blamed me for being tired. And I wasn't done yet. Before we get to the foreclosure notices, the silent treatment, and the text that tried to guilt me back into submission, you need to understand what my family looked like. From the outside, We were picture perfect, at least in the holiday cards. A cozy Portland home with a little vegetable garden out back. My mom, Diane, a homemaker by choice. My dad, Gerald, a retired electrician who built this life with his hands. My younger sister, Lana, an elementary school art teacher with a soft voice and Pinterest-worthy handwriting. And me, the eldest. The serious one. The one who got a real job. The one with too many opinions. Growing up, I used to think I was just too much, too loud, too analytical, too demanding. But looking back, I was just visible in a family that only had room for people who were easy to swallow. I remember this one moment when I was 13. Lana had drawn a crayon picture of our family, everyone smiling, arms linked, standing under a rainbow. I wasn't in it. When I asked her why, she shrugged. "You're always in your room." Mom smiled like it was funny. And Dad said, "She's just focused." Right, honey. But that smile didn't reach their eyes. I learned to disappear early. Still, when Dad had his heart scare in 2018, I dropped everything. They didn't ask. I offered. I created a financial buffer, moved some of my freelance contracts remote so I could be nearby if needed. At the time, it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt expected. And that's the trap. When you're the reliable one in a dysfunctional family, your reliability becomes a currency they spend without permission. I opened a joint savings account, labeled it emergency fund. Only I could move money out. They had view access. Mom joked, "You're like our little CFO." I smiled. I didn't realize CFOs don't get paid. I tracked every transaction in my little black notebook, yes. The same one from part 1, not out of paranoia. Just habit. At first, it was small. $200 for a dental copay, $120 for a burst pipe, then $800 for a shortfall in utilities. Every month, it grew. The entries in the notebook got longer, my explanations shorter. Fast forward to my 30th birthday. It fell on a Saturday. I wasn't expecting a parade, just maybe a call, a card, a happy birthday text. Nothing. But the following Wednesday, my phone lit up with a dozen photos. Lana's surprise birthday dinner. Mom had baked her favorite lemon cake. Dad was wearing a goofy party hat. The caption said, "Family is everything." I zoomed in on one picture. On the countertop behind Lana, I spotted a bottle of wine I'd bought for Mom last Christmas, never opened. Still with the tag that said, "To Diane, thank you for everything." She had crossed out my name and written "from the Moors." That was the first time my stomach turned. Not from sadness, not from rage, from clarity. I wasn't invisible. I was deliberately erased. Still, I stayed. I gave them grace. I told myself, maybe they forgot. Maybe things are just hard right now. Then came the heater repair bill. $3,400. Dad texted, "Can you spot us this once?" It's freezing and Lana's visiting. So I did. Logged in. Transferred the funds. Added it to the notebook. Jan 14. HVAC replacement $3,400. No repayment discussed. 2 weeks later, I got a Chase alert. A Sephora purchase, $319. Then Uber Eats, $89.67. I asked Mom. She laughed. "That's what the account's for, right?" I said. "It's not a lifestyle fund." She got quiet, then said, "You need to stop holding things over our heads. It's not attractive." That was the second time something inside me cracked. At work, I started checking my phone less. Stopped responding to "Can you help with?" Started rereading old texts. So many. Can you wire $300? So few. How are you doing? Then came the day I called my mom. Just to talk. I had this dumb hope maybe we'd clear the air. Maybe she'd say thank you. Even once. But instead, she picked up and said, "Is this about money again?" I said, "No. I just wanted to hear your voice." She sighed. "Selena, we're in the middle of dinner. Can this wait?" It was 5:07 p.m. I heard clinking silverware in the background. Someone laughed Lana's voice. I hung up. I didn't call again. The next morning, I flipped open the notebook again, went back to page 1, started rereading, item by item. Each line didn't feel like generosity anymore. It felt like evidence. That night, I lit a candle, sat on my porch, and stared at the stars. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself, what if I stopped showing up? Not in a loud, messy way. Not with drama. Just unplugging the machine. What would happen if the bank closed? If the auto payments paused? If the CFO submitted her resignation? I smiled. Not a vengeful smile. A tired one. Because I already knew the answer. They'd panic. Not because they lost me, but because they lost the system I built around them. But I wasn't ready to pull the plug. Not yet. Because what happened next would make that decision for me. And it came in the form of a voicemail from my mother. Just 11 seconds long. 11 seconds that burned down the last bridge I didn't even know I was still walking across. The voicemail was exactly 11 seconds long. I still remember the way it lit up my screen, Mom. One new voicemail. I had just gotten out of the shower, towel wrapped around me, hair dripping onto the tile floor. The world was quiet, soft. I felt still. Then I pressed play. "You're not in this family anymore. Selena. You never really were. Stay gone." Click. No hello. No pause. No hint of hesitation. Just the emotional equivalent of a trapdoor slamming shut beneath my feet. I don't know how long I stood there, barefoot, staring at the wall. At first, I felt nothing. Then a tightness, somewhere in the back of my throat. But not tears. It wasn't grief. It was recognition. She'd finally said out loud what I had spent 3 decades sensing in the silences. I sat down at my desk, pulled out the notebook, flipped to the last page, and wrote in block letters, "Confirmed." I didn't rage. I didn't spiral. I just started unplugging. I logged into the mortgage portal, unlinked my name from the payment profile, canceled the auto drafts I had been covering since 2021. Then I called the county office and asked a question I never thought I'd say aloud. What's the process for removing myself from a property tax copay if my name isn't on the deed? The woman on the other end was surprisingly kind. Said, "You're not liable if you're not an owner." I thanked her. Hung up. Then I opened the shared Chase account, the one I had set up after Dad's surgery. I froze it. Just like that. One button. A quiet click echoed in my chest. I don't know if it was the sound of closure or a final heartbeat. By 10:42 a.m., I was out. Completely. And then, silence. For 2 days, I didn't hear from anyone. Not Lana. Not Dad. Definitely not Mom. I went to work, ate lunch, slept deeper than I had in months. And then, like clockwork, the storm arrived. It started with a voicemail from my father. His voice was tight, clipped. "Selena, I don't know what's going on, but the mortgage payment bounced. We're getting notices. Call me." Then a text from Lana. "Hey, Just checking in. Everything okay? You've been kinda MIA lately. Followed by, Dad said something about money stuff. Can we talk? Classic Lana. Start soft. Feel things out. Play the peacekeeper. I didn't respond. Then came the email. From Mom. Subject line. This is childish. No greeting. Just, you don't get to pull the rug and disappear. We are still your family, whether you like it or not. You have responsibilities. That word, responsibilities. Like I was some department head who'd abandoned her post, not a daughter who'd been bled dry. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and pulled up every financial record I had. Utility bills, loan history, transfer logs. I exported them all into one folder, the ghost file, because I wasn't about to haunt their inbox with accusations. But I needed a record. Proof for myself that I hadn't imagined it. Then, the twist I didn't see coming. Saturday morning. Doorbell rings. I peeked through the blinds and Rachel, my ex, standing there with a look that was half guilt, half mission. I opened the door slowly. She held up her hands. I'm not here to fight. I crossed my arms. You're here for them. She blinked. No. I just wanted to talk. Your dad reached out. He said you were going through something. I got worried. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. Rachel walked in like she remembered the floor plan, which she did. She glanced around, noticed the missing family photos, the quiet, the cold. She said, Selena, this isn't like you. I replied, no, this is me. The part of me no one ever wanted to deal with. She exhaled slowly. Then, almost too softly, your mom said you were being dramatic. There it was. The real reason she was here? Not because she missed me, but because she was recruited. They'd sent in the one person they knew could still access my softer parts. I sat on the couch, gestured to the chair. Let me guess. They told you I cut them off. D made it sound like I was unstable, maybe even cruel. She looked guilty, didn't deny it. So I opened my laptop, turned it toward her. A spreadsheet, line by line. Every contribution, every date, every cent. Then I said, read that. Then tell me who abandoned who. Rachel didn't speak for a long time. When she finally stood up, she said, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for it. Didn't need it. She left without another word. And I closed the door this time slower. Not out of sentiment, out of sureness. Because the next step wasn't just survival. It was strategy. I pulled out the notebook one last time. Wrote across the bottom of the final page. Phase 1. Complete. And then, I opened a new section. Blank. Untouched. Titled, Operation Extraction. Because I wasn't just done giving. I was done belonging. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine was served with itemized receipts, notarized documents, and a trail of digital breadcrumbs only I could trace. The morning after Rachel left, I sat down at my dining table with 3 things. My laptop, a cup of strong coffee, and that black notebook, the one that had become more than a ledger. It was my war journal. I opened to a fresh page and wrote, Operation Extraction, Phase 2, Strategic Disentanglement. Because cutting emotional ties wasn't enough. I had to erase myself from the infrastructure, from the wires they plugged into me, hoping I'd never pull the cord. Step 1. Real estate. The house they lived in, my childhood home, was under their names. But 5 years ago, when Dad's credit tanked after a series of missed medical bills, I co-signed on a second mortgage. They needed it to refinance. I was the clean credit line, the responsible daughter. It gave them better terms, lower rates, and all it cost me was everything. So now, I contacted the mortgage servicer, requested a release of liability form, cited personal financial hardship and a complete cessation of financial relationship with the borrowers. The woman on the line paused, said, "Just to be clear, you're sure?" I laughed. Not bitter, just hollow. Ma'am, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Step 2. Taxes. Back in 2021, my mother had asked me to just temporarily take over the annual property tax payments. She'd even sent me the county login. For 3 years, I'd paid like clockwork every January. 4 to 210. 12. No one had offered reimbursement. No one had said thanks. When I asked once about adjusting the house deed, Mom waved it off. "Oh, honey, that's complicated. And besides, it's not like we're selling it. It's our family home." Now, I emailed the county office, told them to remove me from all communication regarding parcel ID 080203. I wasn't the owner. I wouldn't be the payer. Step 3.
The safety net.
They didn't know I'd opened a personal savings account 2 months earlier. Named it Fund. Free Selena. Every time I felt the itch to transfer them money, I'd put it there instead. By that Saturday, it had over 6,000. Step 4. The final ties. I contacted the utility company's electric, gas, internet. Requested removal of my email from all billing notifications. Made one last payment to clear any overlap. Then disconnected my card. I was no longer the invisible scaffolding. If things collapsed, so be it. That evening, I walked to my closet and pulled out a cardboard box. Inside, photos, letters, birthday cards never sent. On top was an envelope from Lana. High school era. Selena, you're the best big sister ever.
I want to be just like you one day.
I stared at it longer than I should have, then placed it back inside. Taped the box shut, not with anger, with finality. But I wasn't naive. I knew extraction came with aftershocks. And right on cue, it began. Sunday morning. 8:17 a.m. Text from Dad. "The mortgage site says your name is off the account. What is happening?" Then, "We need to talk. This isn't right. You can't just disappear." Disagree. I could. And I had. Then Lana called. I didn't pick up. She texted instead. "Please don't do this. We're a family. You don't just abandon your own." Funny. That word again. Family. They love to invoke it only when it served them. But Lana's message stung in a way the others didn't. Because part of me wanted her to get it. To understand. To say, "You were never crazy. You were never selfish." But all she said was, "Can you at least talk to Mom? She's not well." So I replied, "Can she define not well? Is it regret or inconvenience?" No response. And then came the last card they had left to play. Wednesday night. Doorbell. Again. I peeked through the blinds. It was Lana, holding a Tupperware dish. Her smile was small. Unsure. I opened the door. "Hi," she said. "I brought that quinoa salad you like." I didn't move. I just wanted to talk. Not about money. Just us. Please. I hesitated. Then stepped aside. We sat at the kitchen counter. She placed the dish down like it was a peace offering. She looked around. "Your place is still so, minimalist. Neat." Always made me feel calm. I waited. Let the silence stretch. Then she said, "They're really scared. Dad said the bank might start calling. Mom is, well, you know how she is." I nodded. "I do. That's why I'm doing this." Lana's smile faltered. "Look, I get it. They took advantage. They didn't see everything you did. I know that. But you can't just leave them hanging. It's not humane." I stood up, walked to the cabinet, pulled out a Post-it note, wrote, "Nov 2017, $1, 800, Lana's tuition shortfall." I slid it across the counter. She read it, blinked, swallowed. I said, "I never asked for it back, but I noticed you never offered either." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I continued, "I'm not mad, Lana. I'm just done being the invisible ATM." She stood up, the dish of quinoa untouched. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "I know," I replied. "But you came here to fix it without acknowledging it's broken. That's not the same." She left, quietly, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. But it didn't last. Because the next morning, I got a call from the bank's fraud department. Someone had tried to log into the frozen joint account from my parents' IP address 3 times. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I simply opened my laptop, logged in, downloaded the access log, and said aloud, to no one, "You really want war now?" It all started with a notification on my phone. Alert. Suspicious login attempt detected. I stared at the screen in disbelief. 3 failed attempts, all from the IP address traced back to my parents' house. I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline cold. Precise. This wasn't a desperate mistake. It was a calculated move. They wanted access. They wanted control. But I wasn't going to hand it back. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up the access logs from the bank. Timestamp after timestamp. IP address after IP address. I saved the file. It was evidence. Proof that they weren't just upset, they were desperate. I called my bank's fraud department and reported the attempts. I told them it was unauthorized access. Then I blocked every device linked to those IP addresses. I changed all my passwords, enabled 2-factor authentication on every account I owned. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Later that day, the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised. I peeked through the window. My dad was standing there looking both angry and helpless, and right beside him, Rachel. She was smiling that same cautious smile she always wore when trying to soften a blow. I opened the door without hesitation. Dad spoke first. "Selena, can we talk?" "This has gone too far," Rachel added softly. "We're here to help." I shook my head. "No, you're here to undo what I've done. But I'm done being the bank you drain." Dad's face twitched, but Rachel stepped forward, pleading, "Just hear us out. We miss you. We want things to be like before." I felt a flash of old pain a moment when I almost said, "Yes." But I caught myself. Instead, I looked at the quinoa salad Lana had brought a few days ago, still sitting untouched in my fridge. I said, "Help. You haven't even thanked me for keeping you afloat all these years." They said nothing. I continued, "You think I'm the problem. Look around. I'm the one who's leaving. You're the ones who've been taking." Then came the message from Lana. She texted again. "Can we please talk? I don't want to lose you." I thought about her, my little sister, the peacemaker who had tried so hard to be the bridge. But when I texted back, I wrote, "Evir Sariha. On there us." You're not on mine. No reply. Days later, the letters started. Certified mail from the mortgage company. Notices of overdue payments. Threats of foreclosure. My parents' world was crumbling, and I had the power to watch it happen or help them rebuild. But I chose neither. Instead, I took a deep breath, opened the notebook, and flipped to the last page. The page that read, Phase 1. Complete. Phase 2. Initiate. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about finally standing my ground. Just then, the phone rang. Caller ID. Lana. I answered. And that's when everything changed. The day the foreclosure notice arrived at my parents' doorstep, I was sitting in my apartment, the late afternoon sun filtering through the blinds, casting long stripes across my living room floor. My phone buzzed relentlessly texts, missed calls, and emails from Mom. Dad? Even Lana. But I didn't answer. I'd made a choice, and this was the inevitable consequence. For years, I was the invisible foundation they leaned on, the quiet provider who paid bills nobody else wanted to think about. Now, with a few keystrokes and phone calls, I'd pulled away the last support beam. The first knock came at 7:15 p.m. I peered through the peephole and saw Dad, his face pale and drawn, eyes pleading. Rachel stood behind him, that same tentative smile, a shadow of what she once was to me. I opened the door. Dad's voice cracked as he spoke. Selena, please. We need to fix this. The house, it's our home. I felt no warmth, only the cold reality of years of neglect. I was never your bank, I said softly. But I was your daughter. Rachel stepped forward. We want to make things right. Just give us a chance. I shook my head. This isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. They turned away, the weight of their silence heavier than any argument. Days later, Lana sent a message. I'm sorry it's come to this, but maybe it's time we all face the truth. Her words cut deeper than any confrontation. Inside me, a mix of sorrow and relief brewed, because for the first time, I wasn't carrying their burdens alone. I had freed myself. The last thing I did before closing the chapter, I took out my black notebook, now filled with years of sacrifice, debts, and silent pain. I placed it carefully in a box marked archived and slid it under my bed, not burning it, not destroying it, just letting it rest like a wound healing beneath the surface. And then I took the biggest step of all. I applied for a mortgage in my own name, a home to call mine, a future built on my own terms. As I signed the application, my phone rang. Caller ID. Lana. I hesitated. I answered. Her voice was shaky, but clear. Can we really be okay? Is there a way forward? I looked out the window at the city lights flickering alive, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Maybe, I said. But first, we have to be honest about who we are, because some families aren't about blood. They're about boundaries. And sometimes, you have to walk away to truly come home. I never thought the day would come when I'd finally close the chapter on my family's story, not with a bang, but with a quiet, deliberate exhale. Sitting at my new kitchen table, surrounded by empty boxes and the faint scent of fresh paint, I traced my fingers over the cover of that old black notebook, the one filled with years of silent sacrifices, unpaid debts, and unspoken hurts. I didn't rip it up. I didn't burn it. I tucked it away in a drawer, like a relic from a past life I was ready to leave behind. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging it. For years, I believed my worth was tied to how much I could give, how much I could fix, how much I could endure. But standing here today, I realize my value is not defined by others' demands or my family's expectations. I am Selena Moore, not just a daughter, a sister, or a bank to be drained. I am my own person. And in America, that's a freedom hard won. I want to talk about that because many of us grow up with the American dream whispered in our ears. Work hard, sacrifice, and one day you'll build a legacy. But what if the legacy you build is one of pain and exhaustion? What if the dream is just a facade, hiding cycles of dysfunction? Breaking free isn't easy. It's lonely. It's scary. And sometimes, it means walking away from people who share your DNA, but not your respect. I don't share this story to create drama. I share it because I hope it helps someone else recognize when it's time to step back, to protect their own well-being, to set boundaries that no one should cross. In the weeks since I cut ties financially, I've built something new, a community of chosen family, friends who see me, support me, and remind me daily that I am enough. I started volunteering at a local nonprofit, helping others rebuild after family trauma. It's a new legacy, one rooted in resilience, not obligation. And it's mine. But here's the twist no one talks about. Even after you cut the cord, the past can reach out. One evening, I got a message from Lana. Just one line. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I stared at it for a long time. And then I typed back. Maybe one day we can talk. Until then, take care of yourself. Because forgiveness isn't an obligation, it's a choice. As I close this story, I want you to remember, your family doesn't have to define your future. Your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away. I'm still learning what freedom means. But this much I know. It starts with saying, I am enough. Thank you for listening. If you've ever felt trapped by family expectations, hit that like button. Share your story below. Subscribe for more journeys about reclaiming your life, one boundary at a time. Because we deserve more than silence and sacrifice. We deserve peace. And peace begins when we choose ourselves.